Balams talking donkey. Picture this. You're in an Uber and the driver, unprompted, starts dishing out life advice about your questionable choices. Now replace the Uber driver with a donkey and you're halfway to the story of Balams talking donkey. So Balaam, a prophet for hire, got a sweet deal from King Balak to curse the Israelites, who were basically camping in his backyard. After ignoring God's warnings, Balaam hits the road with his trusty old donkey. But on the road, Balaam's donkey keeps acting up, swerving into a field, crushing his foot against a wall, and finally just lying down in the middle of the road, which sends Balaam into full road rage mode, and he starts beating the donkey with his staff like it's a drum solo. Meanwhile, the donkey is the only one who can see the angel of the Lord standing there with a sword blocking the way. And then the donkey straight up talks. It's like the biblical version of Shrek, but instead of making jokes, the donkey basically says, "What's your problem, dude? I'm saving your life." Now, you'd probably freak out when your pet dog turns around and scolds you for not taking its advice. Well, not Balaam, because he just talks right back to his donkey. God eventually opens Balaam's eyes, and he finally sees the angel holding a sword ready to send him to the afterlife. The story of Balaam's talking donkey is a giant neon sign for stubborn people, reminding them to stop ignoring divine roadblocks, and if you refuse, God can even use the most stubborn creature to get your attention. The Nephilim. Imagine if all your favorite celebrities suddenly show up in your small town, marry the locals, and have kids who grow up to be a mix of NBA players and action movie stars. That's basically the vibe of the Nephilim story, except instead of celebrities, it's mysterious heavenly beings, and instead of famous kids, they had literal giants. This tale comes straight from the book of Genesis, where some angels, or sons of God, decided they were done with the heavenly life and made a beeline for Earth. Once here, the angels decided to play matchmaker with human women and had kids. But these weren't your average offspring, they were the Nephilim, towering, super strong giants, basically humanity's version of a cheat code. These creatures were big, strong, and probably the worst people to sit behind in a movie theater. However, God wasn't pleased with the Nephilim stomping around like they owned the place, plus it was around the same time humanity in general was acting up, so God decided it was time to hit the reset button. So he unleashed Noah's flood, a divine cleanup operation that wiped out everything, including these towering giants, except for Noah and his ark crew. God flooding the earth is a lesson in what happens when boundaries are crossed, rules are broken, and chaos erupts. It's like your upstairs neighbors throwing a party that gets so wild it floods your apartment. The mix of divine beings and humans wasn't supposed to happen, and the results were literally too big to handle. Jonah and the big fish. The story of Jonah and the big fish is like the ultimate you can't run from your problem scenario, but with a marine twist. You see, God had given Jonah one simple mission: go to the city of Nineveh and tell them to clean up their act, or risk their city becoming the world's largest fire pit. But Jonah wants no part in it, because Nineveh was basically the ancient world's Vegas, and he's not signing up to be the guy who tells everyone to stop partying, so he hops on a boat going in the exact opposite direction of his divine mission, thinking he can ghost God. Spoiler alert, you can't. While Jonah's chilling on the boat, God sends a storm so intense it makes the sailors think they've signed up for an extreme weather documentary. Jonah, realizing his little escape plan had backfired, admitted the storm was his fault and suggested they throw him overboard. The moment they did, the sea calmed down like it had just clocked out for the day. Instead of drowning, he gets swallowed whole by a giant fish, which became his new, very cramped, stinking living quarters for 3 days and 3 nights. It's like the world's worst Airbnb situation ever. During his time in the fish, Jonah realizes it's pointless running from God, so he prays, apologizes, and promises to follow through with his mission. God, being merciful, has the fish swim to dry land and ejects him like a human cannonball. After his less than glamorous arrival, Jonah heads to Nineveh and does what he was supposed to do in the first place. Surprisingly, the people actually listen, repent, and turn things around. As for Jonah, he learned the hard and smelly way that you can't outrun responsibility or God, and even if you do, God can get your attention even if it means sending a fishy Uber. Lot's wife turns into a pillar of salt. When it comes to taking life advice, don't look back is pretty solid. Well, unless you're reversing a car, but in Lot's wife's case, ignoring that rule turned her into the world's first human salt shaker. It all starts in the infamous cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, 2 cities so wild they make Las Vegas look like a church picnic. Things had spiraled so far out of control that God decided it was time for a clean slate by raining down fire and brimstone on the city. Before the destruction, God sent angels to warn Lot and his family to get out ASAP. The instructions were crystal clear: run for your lives and don't look back. Sounds simple enough, right? It's not like they were carrying their entire 401k or wondering if they left the oven on, but as they were fleeing, Lot's wife couldn't resist one last peek over her shoulder. Maybe she was curious about the fireworks, or maybe she just had FOMO about leaving her old life behind. The second she did, poof, she transformed into a pillar of salt. No dramatic explosion, no fiery punishment, just instant sodium sculpture. Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt because she disobeyed God's command not to look back at Sodom and Gomorrah as they were being destroyed. The significance lies in the salt itself. It's a substance that preserves, representing how she was metaphorically frozen in her longing for a life that was meant to be left behind. Samson's honey harvest. Picture this. You're walking to the grocery store with your friend when they suddenly spot an old rusty dumpster. Before you can say, "That's gross," they dive in, pull out a candy bar, and start munching away like it's gourmet chocolate. Swap the dumpster for a decomposing lion and the candy for honey, and you've got Samson's honey harvest. Samson, known for his superhuman strength and impressive hair game that could make shampoo commercials jealous, was on his way to marry a Philistine woman. While en route, a lion leaped out of nowhere, ready to make him its next meal. But Samson grabbed the lion with his bare hands and ripped it apart like tearing into a rotisserie chicken. No big deal, just another day for the biblical Hulk. Fast forward a bit, Samson's on his way back from the wedding planning, and he decides to swing by the spot where he turned that lion into roadkill. Turns out some bees have moved into that carcass and set up shop, turning it into a makeshift hive. Samson saw the honey and went full Bear Grylls mode, scooping out a handful of honey straight from the corpse and started snacking like he was at an all-you-can-eat buffet. No regard for hygiene, no thought about the bees, or even the dead lion situation, just straight up honey harvesting from a lion corpse. He even takes some of the honey home to share with his parents, casually leaving out the part about where it came from. Samson finding honey in the carcass of a dead animal is like a symbol that sweetness can come from struggle and finding blessings in tough situations. Moses' bronze snake. Picture this. You're on a hiking trip with a group of people, and suddenly a swarm of angry bees descends on your crew. Now imagine that instead of a bug spray, someone pulls out a giant bee plushie and gestures for everyone to focus on it. Somehow this strange solution works, and the chaos stops. That's pretty much the vibe of Moses' bronze snake, an unconventional cure to a venomous disaster. So the Israelites were wandering the desert and were once again in meltdown mode. Hot, tired, hungry. It was like the world's longest road trip minus the snacks. They started throwing shade at Moses and God, grumbling, "Oh, why did you drag us out of Egypt to die in this endless sandbox?" Basically, they were the ancient version of backseat drivers complaining about everything but offering zero solutions. God decided to teach them a lesson by sending snakes. Lots of venomous snakes. Suddenly, the desert floor turned into a slithering minefield, and the Israelites were in full panic mode as the snakes started biting left and right. Complaining turned into screaming real fast. Moses, being the go-to guy for divine complaints, prayed for the people. God's solution was unique. He told Moses to craft a bronze snake, stick it on a pole, and have everyone who got bitten simply look at it to be healed. No potions, no antidotes, just some good old-fashioned bronze snake eye contact. People who glanced at the bronze snake were instantly healed, proving that God has a flair for both creative solutions and a touch of irony. Looking at the statue of a snake to get rid of snake venom coursing through your vein has to take a lot of faith, and that's exactly what the story of Moses' bronze snake represents. It's also a sneak preview of looking to something greater for salvation, a theme that echoes throughout the Bible. Jesus sends demons into pigs. If you're a fan of horror movies, you know the classic scene where the evil spirit inside a possessed kid starts losing it the second the exorcist shows up. That's basically what happened when Jesus encountered two demon-possessed men. So, Jesus was traveling through Jordan when he arrived in the region of the Gadarenes, where two demon-possessed men came charging out of a cemetery like they were auditioning for the lead roles in a horror flick. These guys are next-level terrifying, like the Nun levels of creepy. They're described as so violent that no one could even pass by the area without fearing for their lives. Basically, they were the local "do not enter" warning sign. But the moment they saw Jesus, the demons inside them completely lost it. They know who he was, and realize they're about to get evicted. In what has to be one of the strangest demon requests ever, they beg Jesus not to send them straight to the abyss, but instead to let them relocate to a nearby herd of pigs. Jesus agrees and sends them into the pigs. The second the demons enter the pigs, about 2,000 of them, the whole herd went berserk. They squealed, stampeded, and then made a beeline off a cliff straight into the sea, drowning in what had to be the world's most chaotic group dive. It's like the world's worst synchronized swimming routine ever. The pig herders watching this unfold fold were completely stunned, and instead of thanking Jesus for clearing out their local cemetery creeps, they begged him to leave. Turns out losing an entire herd of pigs was a financial disaster, and they weren't keen on sticking around to see what miracle would wreck their livelihood next. Talk about missing the point. This shows Jesus' authority over evil. He's so powerful that even demons have to ask permission before acting. It also highlights how destructive evil is. The pigs didn't stand a chance once the demons took over. The time the sun stood still. The time the sun stood still is one of the Bible's greatest cosmic plot twists. It's like God hit the pause button on the universe's clock, just so Joshua could wrap up a fight. Joshua and the Israelites were in the middle of a battle against a coalition of enemy kings. It was an all-out brawl, and Joshua and his crew were winning. But there was a problem. Daylight was running out, and it's hard to win a fight when it's too dark to tell friends from foe. Joshua, being bold, prayed to God and asked for the sun to just stop moving. Yes, he essentially asked for a celestial timeout, and it worked, which shows God's power over creation and his willingness to step up when his people need help. The sun basically hit the brakes, the moon stopped in its tracks, and daylight hung around like that one guest who just won't leave the party. It was like nature itself became their backup plan. With this extended daylight savings plan, the Israelites kept fighting until they won. Meanwhile, everyone else, farmers, travelers, and even animals, was probably staring at the sky, wondering if they'd accidentally skipped the season finale of existence. The Curse of the Fig Tree. The Curse of the Fig Tree starts with Jesus, the Prince of Peace, casually cursing a tree because it didn't have snacks. So basically, Jesus and his disciples had been walking for several hours. Like anyone on a long hike, Jesus got hungry. He spotted a fig tree in the distance, its leaves looking lush and promising, like a billboard for all-you-can-eat figs. But when he got up close, it turned out the tree was all style, no substance. Leaves for days, but zero figs. It wasn't even fig season, so technically the tree wasn't slacking, but Jesus, perhaps hangry, wasn't in the mood for excuses. He cursed the tree, saying, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." That's like going to a vending machine, finding it empty, and unplugging it out of spite. Fast forward to the next day, the disciples walked by the tree, and to their surprise, it was completely withered, down to its roots. Not just a little droopy, but dead, like a plant that lost a fight with a flamethrower. And then, in classic Jesus fashion, he turned the fig tree fiasco into a profound teaching moment about faith, prayer, and forgiveness, which honestly feels like a bit of a leap from the tree's snack betrayal. Jesus used the fig tree to teach Christians about authenticity and productivity. The fig tree represents people or systems that look good on the outside, but don't deliver anything meaningful. It's Jesus' way of saying, don't just look the part, actually bear fruit. The Plagues of Egypt. You've probably seen those disaster movies where tsunamis swallow cities or the earth freezes over like it's auditioning for the next ice age. Now crank the catastrophes to 1,000,000, sprinkle in some frogs, firestorms, and absolute chaos, and you've got the Plagues of Egypt in all their epic, apocalyptic glory. It starts when Moses, armed with God's command, tells Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. Pharaoh, being as stubborn as a toddler refusing nap time, says no. So God unleashes the plagues, 10 increasingly chaotic displays of power designed to break Pharaoh's stubborn resistance. The Nile turns into blood, which ruins the water supply and gives everyone fish-free nightmares. Then comes frogs everywhere. Imagine opening your oven and boom, it's Frog City in there. Next, gnats and flies swarm Egypt, turning into an insect lover's dream, but everyone else's nightmare. When Pharaoh still won't budge, God ups the stakes with livestock dropping dead, painful boils, fiery hail, locusts devouring everything, and 3 days of pitch black darkness. Finally, the big one, the death of every Egyptian firstborn, which breaks Pharaoh's resolve, and he tells Moses to take the Israelites and leave. Symbolically, the plagues show God's unmatched power and justice, proving he's in control of nature, life, and death. They also highlight the consequences of hardened hearts and ignoring divine warnings. The Disembodied Hand. Imagine the wildest party you've ever been to, complete with overflowing drinks, then multiply it by 1,000 and you'd get a picture of King Balthazar's royal bash. Except instead of using regular cups, this king was drinking from sacred temple goblets stolen from Jerusalem. It's like someone using grandma's priceless china to eat pizza rolls, but with way more higher stakes. However, mid-party, out of nowhere, a glowing hand appears and starts writing on the wall. No introduction, no explanation, just floating fingers leaving cryptic graffiti like a Halloween decoration gone rogue. The king instantly goes pale, his knees start knocking, and suddenly the vibe goes from party of the year to terrified silence. Nobody at the party can decipher the writing, so they call in Daniel, who has a reputation for cracking divine mysteries. He takes one look and delivers the bad news. The writing says Belshazzar's days as king are over, he's been judged and found lacking, and his kingdom is about to be divided and handed over to the Medes and Persians. That very night the prophecy comes true, Belshazzar is killed and the kingdom falls. Now the disembodied hand represents divine judgment and the idea that no one, not even a powerful king, is above accountability. It's a dramatic way of saying your actions have consequences. The story of the disembodied hand is one of the Bible's most memorable moments, blending divine justice with a side of supernatural shock value. Peter finds money in a fish's mouth. You know that magical moment when you pull out an old jacket, stick your hand in the pocket, and there's a $20 bill you forgot about? Now imagine instead of a jacket, it's a fish, and the cash you found is exactly what you need at that moment. That's basically Peter's story, but with way more faith and a side of fish breath. The story went down in the city of Capernaum, Galilee, where Jesus and Peter had gone to spread the good word. After one of Jesus' temple talks, some temple tax collectors rolled up looking for their dues. Basically, they were like ancient IRS agents, but instead of sending passive-aggressive letters, they showed up in person to question Peter whether Jesus paid the temple tax. Now, Peter, without a shekel to his name, went to Jesus for help. But instead of flipping a coin out of his pocket, Jesus flipped the script. He told Peter to go fishing. Yep, fishing. Not for dinner, though. This was a high-stakes game of finders keepers. Jesus casually explained that the first fish Peter caught would have enough cash in its mouth to cover the taxes for both of them. You know, just your average Tuesday miracle. So Peter grabbed his gear, cast his line, and reeled in the unlikeliest ATM in history. He opened the fish's mouth, and lo and behold, there was a shiny coin staring back at him. Probably the fish's idea of saving for a rainy day. With the miraculous money in hand, Peter settled the tax bill faster than you can say catch of the day, and the situation is resolved. Talk about a fishing expedition with a surprise payout. Symbolically, it's a reminder that God provides, often in unexpected and miraculous ways. It also shows Jesus' authority over creation. Even the fish are on his payroll.